How do we deal with China? How do we tame the dragon strategically as well as economically? I've got Mr. Daniel R. Russel. He's associated with the Asia Society of Policy Institute. Mr. Russel, thank you so much for speaking to NDTV. The world over, we have seen China as an aggressor. But statements from China seem to suggest that India is the aggressor by changing the status quo. What's your assessment?
Well, look, I think the bilateral relationship between India and China had already entered something of a downward spiral well before the deadly clash in the Galwan Valley. I know that Beijing had reacted very negatively to Prime Minister Modi's action on Jammu and Kashmir last summer, specifically the status of Ladakh. So the June 15th incident kind of added fuel to the fire, and it's evoked pretty strong nationalist sentiments in both countries. And that's deepened mistrust and animosity that's going to take a long time to dissipate. I'd note that, recently both countries have committed to de-escalate the situation, and there could be a disengagement as part of a multi-week stabilization period. That's a good thing. But fundamentally, what I'd say is that China's assertiveness at the line of actual control is part of a pattern of behavior. We see it in Hong Kong with the national security law. We see it in the South China Sea. I think it reflects a nationalistic, almost aggressive atmosphere in Beijing right now. And we see that the tactics, elsewhere are the same tactics as we're seeing in Ladakh or we see in the South China Sea, which is push and push until the Chinese meet some resistance, then they pause, maybe pull back slightly, but then push some more. So to me, that means that India is facing some of the same uncomfortable choices that the rest of Asia is wrestling with. And we should probably anticipate a prolonged, difficult period in Sino-Indian relations.
Mr. Russel, there is a military-to-military level dialogue which is on between India and China, and it's bearing fruit also if you believe the statements. But India is also looking at economic distancing from China. Do you think this is going to be a successful strategy?
Well, I know that the Indian government has banned several Chinese apps and reportedly will cancel a major railway project. But the fact of this is that Sino-Indian investment is remarkably low to begin with. And it doesn't seem like the two countries are even close to meeting their agreed trade target of $100 billion. The Chinese, I think, historically, culturally, and politically respect power and have a contempt for weakness. And that means that there's no substitute for India building up its national strength. And I'm not talking principally about military strength along the line of control, but national strength, which means India's economy. And so for India to make progress in developing its national economy, I think will be a key indicator of national strength in the eyes of Beijing.
All right, Mr. Russel, thank you so much for speaking to NDTV. That's a